Hey there, and welcome. I am absolutely thrilled you're here today because we're about to do something that feels, honestly, a little bit like unlocking a secret code. We're going to completely break down the fundamental building blocks of visual art.
Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. First, we'll cover the language of art. Second, the elements of art. Third, the principles of design. And finally, number 4, reading and artwork.
Starting off with Section 1, the language of art and how we communicate through vision. When we look at a beautiful sculpture or a really captivating painting, it's so easy to just assume it was created through some spontaneous burst of magic, right? But in reality, visual art is a specific, highly structured language. Think of the elements of art as your visual alphabet. Just like you literally cannot write a single word without letters, an artist can't create a piece of art without the elements. They're the absolute most basic units. And then, on the other side, we have the principles of design. These are the grammar of our visual language. Grammar tells us how to organize words into a sentence that actually makes sense, while the principles tell the artist exactly how to organize those basic visual elements so the artwork successfully communicates its message.
Moving right along to Section 2, the elements of art, or in other words, our fundamental visual ingredients.
Let's get intimately acquainted with our visual alphabet. We're looking at the raw, fundamental materials that make up absolutely every familiar, everyday object and artwork you've ever laid eyes on. Line, shape, form, color, value, texture, and space. If you strip down the most complex masterpiece in the entire world, you're left with these exact 7 ingredients. For instance, a line can be heavy and rigid or thin and wavy, directing your eye across a canvas. Color and texture bring emotional resonance and literal physical feeling to a surface. Space dictates how things are arranged and how much room they have to breathe. These are the smallest, most basic visual units an artist has in their toolkit.
Now, what's really fascinating here is the distinct difference between 2 specific elements that honestly confuse people all the time: shape and form. A shape is strictly 2-dimensional. It just has length and width. Think of a totally flat square drawn on a piece of paper. But a form is 3-dimensional. It takes that flat shape and gives it real depth, creating a cube. Knowing the difference between the flat shapes on a 2-dimensional plane and 3-dimensional forms in space is a massive first step in visually dissecting any artwork.
But hey, how do you actually make a flat shape look like a 3-dimensional form on a flat piece of paper? Well, that brings us to another truly critical element: value. Value is defined simply as the lightness or darkness of a color. And it is incredible how artists use this single element to create the illusion of depth. By meticulously shifting from light tints to dark shades, an artist can make a flat circle look like a round, heavy sphere without even needing multiple colors. Value is basically the secret engine of realism.
Which brings us to Section 3, the principles of design, or the rules of visual grammar. Okay, so now that we have our alphabet, our lines, shapes, colors, and values, we need to know what to actually do with them. Because if we just throw them on a canvas randomly, we just get visual noise. We need grammar to organize those raw visual materials. So behold the 10 principles of design: balance, contrast, emphasis, movement, pattern, rhythm, proportion, variety, unity, and harmony. These are the rules artists use to combine simple elements into complex emotional pieces. For example, an artist might use a pattern of repeating shapes to create visual rhythm, guiding your eye in a specific movement across the canvas. Or maybe they use proportion to make one element seem massive and dominant, establishing clear emphasis.
Let's look really closely at how these principles interact, because it's a delicate balancing act. And this brilliantly illustrates the push and pull of design. Variety versus unity. Variety is how an artist prevents an artwork from being totally boring. It's the injection of different lines, changing colors, and diverse shapes just to keep your eye entertained. But if you have too much variety, the piece feels like chaotic clutter. And that is exactly where unity comes in. Unity is the cohesive force that ties everything together, ensuring the artwork doesn't just fall apart in individual chaos. The greatest artwork stands perfectly between these 2 principles.
Another absolute powerhouse principle is contrast. This is the arrangement of opposite elements right next to each other. Think light versus dark values, or rough versus smooth textures. Contrast creates tension and commands immediate attention. To apply this to your everyday digital life, just think about why a skip ad button on a video often uses contrasting colors compared to the background. Designers use that extreme visual contrast to draw your eye straight to the action they want you to take, or in an artwork, exactly where the artist wants you to look first.
Let's move to Section 4, reading and artwork,
and putting your new vocabulary into practice.
Let's see how this all builds into our final incredibly practical section. We've learned the alphabet and we've learned the grammar. So now let's apply our new vocabulary directly to interpreting a finished visual piece. You see, art appreciation isn't just standing there staring and waiting for a feeling to magically hit you. It is a highly satisfying, structured four-stage response: description, analysis, interpretation, and judgment. By following these steps methodically, I guarantee you can stand in front of absolutely any artwork in the world, no matter how abstract or confusing it might initially seem, and confidently break it down.
Let's unpack the first half of this process. Stage 1 is description. This is where you simply describe what you see without guessing. Just list the facts. Are there 3 figures? Is it a landscape? What is actually physically there? Then comes stage 2, analysis. This is where you bring in everything we just learned. You analyze how the elements and principles are used, pointing to specific evidence. For example, instead of just saying, "Oh, it looks busy," you would say, "The artist uses a dense pattern of zigzag lines to create rapid visual movement." That objective observation is critically important before you ever jump to conclusions about meaning. Once you've gathered that hard visual evidence, you move right into stage 3, interpretation. Based on the lines, colors, and principles you analyzed, what is the artist actually trying to say? If the piece has really dark values and a heavy, textured form, you might interpret a feeling of sadness or weight. And finally, stage 4 is judgment. Is the artwork successful? Why or why not? The beauty of this framework is that your final judgment isn't just "I like it" or "I hate it." It's a convincing, well-justified judgment directly supported by the specific visual evidence you gathered in the previous stages.
So, the crucial point here is this: I can describe what I see without guessing, analyze with specific evidence, and interpret meaning to justify a balanced judgment. If you can say this, you have absolutely achieved true visual art literacy. You're no longer just a passive viewer, you're an active participant, fully able to translate the silent language of the artist into a clear, articulate understanding.
Which brings us to the end of our explainer, but honestly, the very beginning of your new way of seeing the world. Visual art isn't just confined to fancy museums, it's in the architecture of your house, the design of your coffee cup, and the interface of the very device you're watching this on. So, I want to leave you with an enthusiastic challenge. As soon as this explainer ends, look at the very next object you see in your room. Ask yourself, which elements and principles can you spot organizing its design? Is there contrast? Is there a focus on a flat shape or a 3D form? Use your new vocabulary, step away from the screen, and start reading the visual world around you. Thanks so much for joining me, and happy analyzing!